Today was a big day for Formula One. We didn't get the groundbreaking, hard-hitting blueprint for the future of our sport from Liberty that we thought we were perhaps going to get today. What we got, and I've got the press release here, what we got, and in the first few words of this it says it's a proposal. This is a proposal from Formula One, from Liberty, to the teams as to what the future of our sport might hold. And what's, I guess, disappointing or a bit bland, a little bit vanilla, if you like, is that this is nothing new. This is just an idea of what we all kind of have been talking about for months, of how Formula One should be: a more level playing field, both technically and financially. We want to see a power unit that will encourage new manufacturers to come into our sport. We kind of all knew that. What we really want from Liberty is a set of rules, a hard-hitting letter of the law as to what we expect the future to be. Give it to the teams and say, look, sign up or don't. This is how we imagine Formula One to be in the future. If you want to be part of it, sign on the dotted line. That's what we needed from Liberty today, I felt. Having said that, this is a discussion that is ongoing between Liberty, or FOM, FOM, and all of the teams. And the big thing that has come out of today is actually quite encouraging, that this is a dialogue that is going on. Lots of it is happening behind closed doors, so we, as in the media, have not been privy to the absolute details of that discussion. The press release is a little bit of a kind of fluffy nothing press release, but the conversations that are going on behind all this are pretty meaty. It's just that the teams, we believe, have had to sign up to an NDA to prevent them from discussing the absolute details of those meetings with anybody outside of that room. And I guess, to some extent that's fair enough. The future of the sport is being talked about in serious terms, with serious people, and very soon, and over the next few months, we will have to get to the absolute details of what this actually means. I'm sure you've all seen this by now. It talks about how the power unit will be simplified, made slightly cheaper. That's to encourage new manufacturers or power unit manufacturers to be able to come into the sport. Already we've heard from Aston Martin, Andy Palmer, CEO and chairman of Aston Martin, saying really encouraging. This potentially opens the door for a company like them to come and get involved in Formula One as an engine manufacturer. That in itself is great news. That is exactly what we want from these kind of regulations from 2021 onwards. That's great. They have talked about levelling the financial playing field in terms of spreading the revenue out in a fairer fashion amongst the teams. Ferrari, it looks like, will still get their Ferrari bonus. Of the number being talked about is £40 million as a bonus to them for just being Ferrari. Agree or disagree with that, it will go some way to appeasing Ferrari after their talk of potentially leaving Formula One and starting up on their own. They will still get that, what I see as a huge advantage over all the other teams. £40 million over any other team is a big advantage, because £40 million translates, or should translate, into performance if you spend it correctly. Tell me what you think of that. Should that be happening? Should Ferrari get some kind of advantage for their historical status or not? Open for debate. Apart from that, in fact, there was one thing in the press release that struck me as being strange, and this is in the sporting and technical rules section. It says, and I quote here, "Engineering technology must remain a cornerstone, but driver skill must be the predominant factor in the performance of the car." How do you achieve that without giving every driver the same car? The driver's skill must be the predominant factor in the performance of the car. I can't see how you achieve that. Even if you level the playing field financially, even if you level out some of the technical side, standardising some parts, you're still encouraging teams and manufacturers to come and engineer the best solution they can come up with for their particular power unit and their chassis and their aero. Those things are still on the table. And so you're going to get some teams doing a better job than others. Therefore, you're going to have some cars that will be faster, more reliable, high performance than others. And then after that, how do you then say we want the best driver to be the one who wins? It's not going to happen, is it? Unless you give everybody the same car, in which case you will then potentially get the best driver on the grid winning the race, winning the championship, which is what this statement seems to say. It's impossible. You're still going to have the teams, and I think rightly so, you're going to have the teams competing against each other in a technical sense as well. And that's how Formula One's always been. I just don't understand how that statement can possibly be achieved within the realms of Formula One. But again, let me know your thoughts. So lots of stuff that came out of this. Not too much detail as such yet, although over the course of the day, various team principals and drivers have spoken to us and kind of drip-fed little bits and pieces. There's a budget cap, which is perhaps the headline of this. The budget cap being proposed of what we think is $150 million, which is nowhere near what the bigger teams spend at the moment. I mean, the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari are probably somewhere well into $350 to $400 million. So you can imagine being told they've got to come back to $150 million is a big cap, and something that even Toto Wolff told us this evening is unachievable for them. So this is still very much up for discussion, and somewhere they will find some kind of compromise that works. That budget cap figure, incidentally, doesn't include driver salaries, it doesn't include marketing, and quite interestingly, it doesn't include the highest paid non-driving member of the team. So you'd imagine that may be a team principal or an Adrian Newey type character. It'd be interesting if that comes out, if that becomes public domain, who is the highest paid non-driving member of each team. It will be interesting if we ever get to hear that. So lots of things that are not included in the 150 million. So, that is a figure that has to be taken with a pinch of salt at the moment. But lots to discuss, lots of things that we, are encouraging, as I say. It's just not going to be a big story until we get the actual detail of what Liberty are actually asking the teams to sign up to. And that is what we were perhaps expecting today and really hoping for. But encouraging that this is all being discussed and talked about anyway. This will run for the next few months. Anyway, let's quickly talk about today's cars on track, because FP1, as predicted, was pretty dull. Lots of people doing aero runs with big aero rakes on the car, measuring new parts, new aero parts. McLaren running new little winglets on the side pods, which we hadn't seen before. I think Force India had some new strakes on the bargeboard area of their car. So people trying new things and measuring that with the aero rake pressure sensor devices in FP1. FP2 though was where it was all at. This was the session that happens in the more representative conditions, so darkness, cooler temperatures, the conditions that we will likely see for qualifying in the race. Everybody then was piled into FP2, absolutely looking for performance, looking for longer runs, shorter runs, different tyre runs, and it gave us some data to compare from one team to the next, because nobody could hide their performance in that session. That was the one that counted. And what it looks like at the moment, obviously Ferrari topped the timesheets with Mercedes behind them. What we now know, and again Toto Wolff told us earlier this evening, looking at GPS data, we can see that Ferrari used their high power modes in FP2, whereas Mercedes didn't today. And we already know that Mercedes' higher power modes, or party modes as Lewis calls them, are worth a significant amount of time to them. So we do expect, or I would expect, that in qualifying at least, Mercedes will still have some kind of advantage. But you will probably all know by now, Lewis Hamilton will take a 5-place grid penalty on Sunday's race for changing his gearbox. A hydraulic leak, I think it was, on Lewis's car has forced them to change a gearbox which breaks the sequence of 6 races uninterrupted, where they have to use the same gearbox within the regulations, and therefore they take this penalty. And that's changed the way that their weekend looks, because Lewis today ran the medium tyre, one of very few people to run the medium tyre in FP2, and perhaps that's with an eye on the race, because actually what that showed is that there's potentially a significant undercut between running the super soft and the medium tyre come the race, and if Lewis is going to be compromised from where he starts, that could be a possible different strategy for him that he could deploy. So I think we've got very close performance between Mercedes and Ferrari, certainly in race pace, and even Red Bull. Red Bull's long run pace, particularly with Daniel Ricciardo today after the problems that Max Verstappen had. Daniel Ricciardo looked promising in the long run pace. Their wear rate, tyre wear rate on the Red Bull looked low, which bodes well for them in race conditions. So I think we're in for an exciting race on Sunday. Actually, probably quite an exciting and reasonably close qualifying tomorrow. And despite where Lewis Hamilton qualifies in terms of the qualifying timesheets, he will go back 5 places, which means that come Sunday, we've got a race on our hands.